Jared Verse, Latu, Dallas Turner. How do we stack the top 3 edge rushers in the 2024 NFL Draft?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, guys, if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. Sirius Black, a.k.a. the Jolly Green Giant, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I appreciate every one of you that is an everydayer of this podcast and subscribe and listen each and every day. All right, it's your first listen, first watch of the day, and all you got to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to become that everydayer to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. So today's episode, I am, of course, joined with Jarvis Davis, also on the Locked On Sports podcast family over at Locked On Sports Atlanta. And we're going to be talking about sort of what to make of the Falcons doing absolutely nothing other than re-signing Kentavious Street in the last 2 weeks since Jarvis, we had him on the podcast. We'll get into maybe the nitty-gritty of some of these rule changes. But, of course, we got to start with pass rush, right? We got Jarvis Davis on the podcast. So, you know, we don't get enough opportunities to talk about pass rush on this illustrious show. And, you know, let's get into that conversation, Jarvis, because I sit here, you know, we're at the end of March. This is, I think, our last show in March here on the podcast. And, you know, April was all about draft season fully, you know, free agency's over. And Jarvis, like over the course of the last couple of months, I've heard you express, you know, an affinity for all 3 of the top edge rushers in this draft class, and Dallas Turner out of Alabama, Jared Verse of Florida State, and Latu of UCLA. But I'm curious, you know, sort of as we enter into this, you know, this final home stretch of the last 4 weeks leading up to the draft, sort of how do you stack these guys, right? Do you have a strong affinity for one over the other or 2 over the other, or, you know, or is it kind of a pick your flavor type of group of pass rushers here at the top of the draft as we, you know, hope, want, expect, pray the Atlanta Falcons might select one of these guys in the first round?
You know what, man? To be honest with you, I think it's more so of a flavor. If I sound like Terry Fonda, like there's some different flavors in this draft when it comes to the edge rushers. But if you just ask me to stack them, and I'll tell you why. Like I start off with Latu. I think he has the absolute hands down the best hand game. When it's third long, he's the hands that I want on that doggone on the end of the line right there. So because he almost kind of reminds me of Jalen Phillips when he's talking about with the injuries and dealing with injuries and everything. But the guy just uses his hands consistently, and that's what I look for when I talking about guys going from the college level into the NFL. Like, what type of repertoire do you have? Do you consistently use it? Because a lot of times, man, when you're out there rushing and playing against the run and then third down comes along, a lot of times guys get tired, man. And you start to see those guys just coming off the line and just bull rushing. And, you know, that ain't going to work, man. You can get you a sack, true enough. You know, when you talk about the Aaron Donalds and the Reggie Whites and those guys, you seen those guys bull rush through guys, but you're not doing it every play, man, every down. So you got to work your moves and work your hands. And I think Latu, he's the guy that consistently shows that on tape. So that's my number one. Number 2, I'm going with Jared Verse because Jared Verse just pops off the screen, run or pass. And he is just super heavy-handed. When he puts his hands on guys, like offensive linemen move. And I love to see that type of stuff. But I think, you know, when you're talking about the overall player, I feel like Jared Verse has a little bit more upside than Latu, but you just talking about just the overall guy. He's my favorite. So, but he still kind of falls in that 2 category because I value guys who can get home, man, and who have that repertoire to be able to get to the quarterback. So I think he's a guy that can not only, get to the quarterback verse, that is, but I think he can make a lot of noise in that run game too. So, but just from a Falcons standpoint, you want the guy that can get home on a consistent basis. So that's why I got him on 2. And then Dallas Turner, super freakish athlete, right? I'm not questioning any of that whatsoever. People are like, well, why you got him at number 3? I got him at number 3 because a lot of times with guys his size, they like to use that speed, right? And we know once that tape gets out on you that you like to do that speed and don't bring anything else to the table, you get Vic Beasley. Not saying he's going to be Vic Beasley, but I am saying a lot of times when offensive tackles get those big offensive tackles get their hands on him, it's hard for him to disengage. And that's what you talk about, that counter move, right? Like, and if you always using that speed, and you don't never necessarily come up with that counter move or an alternative move to that speed to kind of, to offset it, to kind of catch guys off guard. I just feel like that I never really saw that when I watched, because I watched like 2 or 3 games, at least 3 or 4 games of those pass rush snaps, and I just didn't see it, and that kind of concerns me when you have a guy that freakish of an athlete, but he's not able to like disengage when it comes to when those offensive linemen get their hands on, because the offensive linemen gonna get their hands on you. Like, you ain't gonna be playing against Vanderbilt, and Kentucky and all that stuff like that. Like, those offensive tackles, you're not gonna see those guys. You're gonna see the best of the best on a weekly basis. So you're gonna have to figure out. They're gonna come to a point where you got to figure out how to get that man's hands off you. And I just didn't see him do that enough.
Okay. So, Turner is really the I guess the rawer piece of clay, right? With
Absolutely.
with the upside and the traits or whatever. And Verse and Latu, and I tend to agree, probably a little bit more polished coming in to the NFL. How do you sort of weigh that, right? Because, I think with a guy like Turner, if you believe in the player, right, the makeup that Terry Fontenot constantly talks about, and you believe in your coaching staff to be able to develop that, you know, I think like it makes sense why a lot of people think Dallas Turner will be the top edge rusher, because you're not necessarily drafting always for what you want in the guy year one, which I think it's fair to say that, if you're guessing who's going to probably be the more productive pass rusher in 2024, it's probably going to be Verse or Latu, right?
Right.
But when it comes to who's going to be that guy in 2027 that teams are going to game plan for, you can understand why someone's going to fall in love with Dallas Turner, because it's like, if we can get, him to rush with a plan, and we can, do all of these things, there's tremendous upside with an athlete of his capability. And I guess for me, like, that's kind of my challenge, because I was a big Latu guy during the season, but I was a little underwhelmed at the Senior Bowl, because I wanted to see him win in different ways, because I'm of the opinion, like, because I remember talking about this 2 years ago when the Falcons drafted Ebiketie, where it's like, I like technical pass rushers, but my concern with Ebiketie, and that's one of the reasons why I was so high on AK when we drafted him, but he hasn't quite lived up to my expectations, because part of me wonders that, there's going to be some guys that you're going to face that you're not going to be able to beat with technique, right? Like, when you face a Lane Johnson, like, he's just going to let you do whatever you want, and then he's just going to counter off of whatever you do. And obviously there's not every tackle in the NFL is Lane Johnson, but I do wonder a little bit, like, if you don't have that sort of pitch where you can just, what, screw it, I'm just going to go through this guy, or I'm just going to go past this guy. Because, like, I remember Brian Burns a lot. Like, a lot of when he was coming out of Florida State, people were in love with his sort of refined rush plan and the technical aspects. And then he got to the league, and he's just like, I'm just going to be a fastball pitcher, and like, that's how I'm going to win the vast majority of times, and that works for me. And like, I don't need to be this super technical guy. And so that's the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause with Latu, where it's like, I don't know if you have that pitch in you, and I wanted to see more of that at the Senior Bowl. And so that's the one thing that gives me pause. And so, like, for me, like, but as I say that, like, I think if the Falcons were to draft any of these 3 guys, I would be happy with them selecting these guys. It is just kind of what is your flavor? And it's just, to me, it's going to be a question of, how much do you value the traits? How much do you value that sort of plug and play ability, that sort of thing? And, depending on who you ask, you, myself, all the people listening, the Falcons themselves, I'm sure they all have a sort of different answer. But what are your thoughts on that?
Man, I'm totally with you because here's the thing. Like, I look at, obviously coaching staff, that matters when it comes to, like, not only you want to look at what the guy can bring in 2024, but I think you got to figure out what that guy's ceiling is, right? Like, because I've talked about, maybe on this podcast and definitely on Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast, I didn't think Desmond Ritter's ceiling was that high. I hate to be bagging on the man, but that just kind of gives you an idea of, like, okay, I know what I need to expect in that year one. We're going to run the football, and we hopefully can be able to take a couple shots down the field with play action and everything like that. We're going to grind it out on offense and be able to punch it in the red zone and have some really good success in the red zone running the football, right? That didn't necessarily work out. But I feel like when it comes to these edge rushers, like I said, Latu has the best hands down for me. But I want to take him at 8. So if you're telling me that you got a guy in Dallas Turner, obviously has all the athletic ability, the speed, the power, all that. He got all of that, right? And he just quite haven't put all of it onto tape just yet. And from a talent standpoint, you got to look at his ceiling. If you feel like that ceiling is high as I feel like it is, I feel like it's high. But if I just really feel like you should take a flyer on him. But a guy like Latu, that's a scenario where if the Broncos or somebody give me a phone call, or the Vikings say, hey, we trying to get up into 8 because JJ McCarthy fell in some mysterious way. Yeah, no doubt. I'll trade back. I'll take Latu. And then that extra second round pick or whatever, I can figure out a guy that can come in and rush from the middle of the defense as well. Or I can get me a nice corner, or Kamari Lassiter might be available in the second round. So I'm thinking from a standpoint of, I feel like it depends on who's available at that time. Obviously, I know Latu more than likely is going to be available at 8. But if Dallas Turner's sitting there, I promise it'll be hard for me to pass up on a guy like that. But Jared Verse it's just that overall what he's showing right now. It's, man, it's hard, man. But I just feel like me just wanting and just yearning for somebody to know exactly what you're gonna get on third and long. Man, I feel like Latu got the tools, but you talking about ceiling and what could potentially be 2 or 3 years down the road with Turner. Whew, man, it's like I said, those guys are real close, man. They're real close. I feel like it, depending on the scenario and how things play out on draft day, whether or not the Falcons might get one of those cats. I feel like they can, but if depending on how you play it, man, you can come out on top for real, if they do it right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But we'll see what that, we'll see how that breaks down on draft night. But in the meantime, we'll see if the Falcons are making any moves, and we'll talk with Jarvis about the lack of moves. We'll get into it, and whether or not the Falcons are done in free agency as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So, guys, say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel's going to let you bet on every game of this year's tournament. Whether you're betting on the big upset or you're riding with that one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And even if you're not into March Madness, of course, FanDuel has you covered, right? Baseball season starting up this weekend. Why not go check that out? Right? You got the NHL, you got the NBA, you got the upcoming NFL draft, right? FanDuel has betting odds on who's going to be that 8th overall selection. Maybe that's the Falcons. Maybe that's somebody else picking there, like Jarvis just suggested. Go check it out by heading over to FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can bet on NHL, NBA, MLB, the NFL draft, or you can bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. So if you're watching these 4-letter networks all day, why not switch to a new 4-letter network, LOPN, the Locked On Podcast Network, with their 24/7 streaming channel every day, giving you the biggest stories. Locked On Sports Today, give you that can't miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Of course, check out Locked On Sports Atlanta, also streaming on YouTube or your free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Jarvis, I thought we talked last week. It's been how non-existent the Falcons have been these last 2 weeks since we actually talked. That it was like, oh yeah, well, I talked to Jarvis last week. We'll see what he's been up to and what he thinks of the last week of Falcon stuff. But it's been 2 weeks, and the last time we talked, it was the day where they traded for Desmond Ritter. They traded away Desmond Ritter, and they got the tampering stuff came out. And so a lot happened on that Thursday, and then pretty much nothing else has happened since then, other than them bringing back Kentavious Street. So I'm just curious. I've been quietly grumbling, or not quietly, loudly grumbling on this podcast for the last 2 weeks that the Falcons aren't doing anything.
Right.
I'm just curious, where are you at with the sort of, the Falcons vibing, chilling, whatever you want to call it, at this point in the offseason, between now and the draft?
They ain't got no money. Where the money at? What, $2 million in salary cap space? They gonna have to make some phone calls, Jack. Tomorrow. Hey, Grady, hey man, how you doing? How that rehab going? How about we convert some of this bread over to this signing bonus for this year, and so we can reduce this that salary number we got to pay you during the season. Or Jake, hey, big head, how you doing? Like, man, that's the only way it's gonna get done, Aaron. Like, they ain't got no money. Like, they got to make sure they got enough for to sign this draft class if they want to sign somebody of any significance. Because the old head of pass rushers, they're gonna be about $5-6 million at least on a 1-year deal. Of course, maybe throw a couple incentives in there depending on who it is. I'm not surprised, man. Like, that's why when people start talking about this whole Hassan Reddick and people just going crazy, yeah, they're gonna trade for Hassan. Where the money at, Jack? Like, please tell me, let me know, because I don't see it. Because according to Spotrac, I'm gonna get a report on you. According to Spotrac, these folks ain't got nothing about $2 million sitting right there chilling right now. Because you know who they signed? They signed Kurt Mother Blanket Cousins. You know what I'm saying? Like, I almost slipped just now. I'm glad I did. Aaron, you probably got to edit that out, my brother.
It's like, I'm gonna have to do a lot more editing on this episode than I initially thought. Okay, all right.
Yeah. I ain't trying to make my boy work too hard. So, we good on that. But seriously though, man, yeah, man, this you got the big boy Kirk, man, like Kurt Wood. That's gonna be my nickname for him, Kurt Wood. That's what I'm gonna call him. Yeah, Kurt Wood. It's a little hood around here, you know what I'm saying? Around the way, around the in Atlanta. So y'all do your research on that. But yeah, I really feel like, man, until they make those phone calls, Terry said, come humbly, on bended knee and say, hey, let's convert some of this bread over. We ain't gonna see no moves. But once they do that, which I feel they will, I really feel like I think there's gonna be there's some corners out there that might be kind of interesting, maybe, possibly, potentially. That they might be looking at closer to training camp, because that's where the old heads and the vets, they want to wait. They ain't trying to go to no spring, nothing. We trying to figure out. I already know I know what I got to do. So I think we'll probably see some movement closer to the summertime when if they don't get what they need in the draft.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's where my expectations are. Just as someone very selfishly who does a daily podcast and likes to have new things to talk about each and every day on the podcast, is like, it's like, all right, if I had known this, I would have went on vacation for the last 2 weeks. It's like I
just trying to hold out. I was like,
I know Terry and Raheem listen to the show, so they're everydayers, right? But it's just like, just give me a heads up, man. Just give me a heads up so I know when I can plan my vacations.
Y'all don't break. Okay, all right.
It's just like
I'm playing around that.
I could have. I wanted to go to Orlando, for the owners' meetings and whatnot. Like, I could have gone to Disney World or something like that, but
Yeah, Raheem was down there with the little gold. What he had a little gold shirt on, and man was glistening, dog. Like what you been doing, bro? You been working out? Raheem was out there glistening, dog, talking about Desmond Ritter. And we had a plan for him. Shoot, I don't know what happened. Somebody just made a call. I'm like, hey man, we got 2 pieces of the biscuit for you. Y'all want to trade it? I be feeling so bad about Desmond Ritter. That's 2 times in this show that I've been talking about Desmond Ritter in not so a glowing fashion. But yeah, man. But I want to go to Orlando too.
You know?
Well, you know what? No, I don't. You know why I don't want to go to Orlando, Aaron?
What's that?
I took my daughters to Disney World December.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of money. So I can't afford to go back unless somebody's paying for it. Yes. Yeah, that was pretty expensive.
Okay.
Yeah. Anytime you say kids want to say they want to go to Disney World, try to figure out how to way to get out of it.
Okay.
It's very expensive.
I'll keep that in mind for the non-existent kids that I have.
Yes.
I have been to Orlando in December though. It's very nice though.
Oh no doubt. No,
Like,
I had a good time. Don't get me wrong, but once you have a good time, you got to go look at that bill. You got to look at your bank account and see how it's set up now.
That's
See
true.
the way it's set up now is not the way it was set up before. So it's gonna be a little tight. Maybe get some bologna sandwiches around this joint, with a little mustard.
Mustard is extra. No, you ain't get some mustard.
Everything is extra nowadays.
You're gonna eat that dry bologna sandwich and you're gonna like it.
But
But
mustard color shirt like Raheem Morris.
well, speaking of the owners' meetings, let's get into the rule changes and let's see if Jarvis is as fired up about some of these rule changes, the new kickoff rule, the new hips drop swivel tackle, right? All this stuff.
Bang, boogie. Jump the boogie.
As
boogie.
the rest of the internet seems to be, this is the death of football. But we'll see if Jarvis has similar sentiments as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So here we are at the point in these episodes where things just go off the rails, so might as well lean into it. Let's talk about these new rule changes, right? And at the owners' meetings, the NFL passed some new rules. They banned the hip drop swivel tackle, not just the hip drop, right? You can wrap a guy and then drop your weight, but you just can't use him as a swing to swing your legs around, and as our new favorite word, Jarvis, is injurious. It's an injurious tackle.
Gerald Jones.
What's the other? I can't even remember. Oh, the new kickoff. I just literally talked about it 12 seconds ago. I don't remember what the new rule is. The new kickoff rule, which is interesting, and to me, it's not a coincidence that Cordero Patterson immediately signed with the team the day after, within 24 hours of them changing. Oh, kickoffs are back. Okay, let's go get the guy that's the best kickoff returner in NFL history. So shout out to the Steelers for doing that. And also now you don't have to carry you don't have to carry a Logan Woodside on your roster anymore, right? You can now, that emergency third quarterback can be a practice squad guy. So, maybe that frees up a roster spot for like a Parker Hesse or somebody who actually is going to contribute on game days or something along those lines in the future.
Knows he's the only one that could, right?
Yeah, So, Jarvis, when you saw all these rule changes, were you as fired up as people were about the NFL ruining the game with the tackle stuff? What are your thoughts on the kickoff stuff? Any of these other rule changes sort of stand out to you?
First of all, the swivel hip drop. Yeah, say that fast 3 times.
It's weird.
That one's kind of interesting to me because it seems like all of the rules that have been changed when it comes to just basic football stuff, right? We're talking about tackling, right? That is one of the pillars of this game and how it started and how it became so popular, how people tackle, right? And it seems like it's just so many rules that are catered towards the offense, to benefit the offense. Like, when the last time a rule has been changed to benefit the defense? Not necessarily benefit the defense, or changed because of people are concerned about the safety of guys on defense, right? So it just makes it, at some point you're going to get to, the target is only going to be knees and ankles. And from my last time I checked, career can end from a knee, or somebody taking out your little Achilles, and and wrapping up around your ankles, and rolling up on them bad boys, because hey, I can't grab you around your waist and doggone drop my weight and then put my legs up and try to orangutan and swing, and all them lanes and stuff. And I can't do that no more. So how am I gonna get you down if I'm chasing you from behind? Okay, well, let me get your little ankles, and then, given how the momentum and speed and how science works, if I jump down on your ankles and I just roll, and I just so happen to roll, are you gonna take that out too the following year? It's just, where does it end? That's my whole thing. Like, when it comes to the tackling stuff, like, what are we gonna be able to, talking about we, like I'm playing now, but what are we gonna be able to target, at some point? It's gonna get to a point, and I know people being real facetious when they talking about flags and all that stuff, but like, at some point, you already can't hit the quarterback from what is it, chest and the knee now? Now, do I take the hip?
Can you hit the quarterback at all? I don't know if you're
Right,
allowed
that's
to
what
do
I'm saying.
that. Yeah.
Like, so I gotta remove his hips from my eyesight. So now I can hit right above the quad, and then right below his nipple, and that's it. Like, that's the only thing I can tackle on the quarterback. It don't, but Lord forbid, let it be a half second after you throw the ball.
Mm.
Like, where am I go? Where am I going to go? Like, eventually it's going to be nothing but the knees, like right there on the knees. Like, I know he's going to fall if I hit him in his knees. That's for sure. So it's just, I think that's the one thing that they're kind of just not necessarily howling at the moon, so to speak, but it did move me a certain way when I found out that they changed that particular rule.
Yeah, I get it. I think the criticism is all fair. I just think people are just like taking it to the most extreme version of like, this is flag football now. It's like, all right, calm down, guys.
Calm
Like,
down.
it's like,
It's still a dangerous game. Yes.
yeah, it's like
Yes.
one tackle a game. Calm down. You know what I'm saying? Like, calm down.
Right. Won the game. And
Yeah.
somebody was like, see, that's why it needs to be. I was like, for one time, it's the type of tackle happens one time a game, and then a rule needs to be put in place to get rid of it. Like, the whole concussion thing, I get it. I totally understand. Concussions running rampant, right? Like, I get that. I understand that. There were millions of dollars worth of studies, more than likely, put into studying that, and trying to figure out what the exact actual issue was when it comes to head injuries. I get it, but this one just seems like, oh yeah, what happened once? Somebody got hurt. Andrew? Oh, yeah, just for the safety of the game. It will making sure the safety of the players are our priority. But y'all still are running that artificial turf out there, and there are studies behind that. Like, hey, man, it makes more sense from a health standpoint to play on natural grass. Last time I checked, I don't care how much doggone studies and science y'all put into all this artificial stuff, but man, natural grass is better. And you got owners who out here say, "Oh, that's gonna cost too much to maintain, so we just gonna keep it all the same." What? Hold on. What now? Oh, make it make sense, because it's not right now. But I am intrigued by this whole kickoff thing, right? Because I feel like, brother Marquise Williams, a special team coordinator for the Falcons, he about to earn his check. And I feel like that's fun. That's the fun part. That's the football part, right? Because you got to try to figure out, how can I strategize? How can I figure out ways to open up lanes, like the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to do for Cordell Patterson, because that's just what he does. He knows how to find a lane and hit that bad boy. It might not be as fast as he used to be, but he knows how to hit a lane on a kickoff return. So, just from a technical aspect of the game, a strategy aspect of the game, I am looking forward to how these special team coordinators are going to handle this, because the ones that are earning their check, they're gonna shine, and I can't wait to see it.
Okay. Well, Jarvis, that's where we'll leave this thing. With baseball season starting up, well, what's the haps going on Locked On Sports Atlanta with it's we're about to be in Brave season. So what's the latest on that?
Well, they were supposed to, they're gonna be, opening day gonna be today, and we're gonna have our guy Grant McCarley, who's our Braves insider, and Jake Mastriani, who's the host of Locked On Braves, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Those guys are gonna be on right after the game is over with, so make sure you guys check that out. Those guys are super knowledgeable. They've forgotten about baseball as much as I know. Whatever that or however that saying goes. I don't know. I messed it up. Probably more than likely. But just
You
like my
forgot how
math.
to say it. Yeah, that was one of the things you
Just
forgot,
like my
right?
math on the microphone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work. I'm pretty good with it off the microphone, but on the microphone it just gets weird. But yeah, make sure you guys check that out. Those guys do good work, and they'll be on after every game.
There you guys have it. Well, we'll be back next week with a mock draft Monday, and we'll have plenty more guests giving their thoughts on the draft and what the Falcons should or should not do in the draft. So make sure you stay tuned to that here as your first listen on Locked On Falcons. And of course, check out Locked On Sports today and Locked On Sports Atlanta for all your Braves, Hawks, Falcons, Bulldogs, etc. coverage right here on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.